Good afternoon. My name is John Chattel. I'm a member of the Virtual Lab support team, and I'll be talking to you today about everything you need to know about National Service Directive 80-8 and the NOAA Project Registry. So basically to discuss the policy directive designed to chronicle information about transition of research and development projects to operations, we'll look at the directive's goals, and then we'll see how what it's actually asking us to do. We'll then look at the project registry and how it can help us live up to those expectations. And then we'll take a look at the project registry itself in a live demo. So basically the goal of Directive 80-8 is accountability. That is to say, Congress and through their representatives basically commit money to the National Weather Service to improve its operations, to conduct research and development. And we would love to be able to convince the nation that we're showing benefits as a result of those dollars. And then the directive also asks, for us to monitor the process of transition with the goal of, knowing what's in our portfolio, understanding, do we have enough funding to ensure that these projects get transitioned, make sure that projects are matched up against requirements so that we're doing, the right sorts of activities, and then ensure that there's a viable path to transition. And here the focus is on, not only the R&D, but making sure that the operational world is ready to accept the fruits of that effort. And then we also want to, promote an effective transition process. So, we understand what's going on through our monitoring, but then we want to go the next step, make sure that process is, leading to the best possible outcomes for both Congress and the taxpayers. And we do that by, facilitating coordination. So we make sure that everybody is on the same page, same sheet of music, and in so doing, we'll hopefully eliminate any redundancy that might come with people going, sort of working without knowledge of what everyone else is doing. And then also, the idea is to make sure that operations is integrated into the process early on to make sure that the fruits of the R2O process move seamlessly from step to step and ultimately into transition. So if you look at the text in 80-8, you'll see that it's fairly clear in several areas, and we've labeled these as mandates. And so the first one is that all projects in the National Weather Service need to be registered in the project's registry. And the URL for the registry is shown here in the gray text. So if you ever want to pop in and take a look, you're certainly welcome to do that. We'll look at that in more detail during the demo. So in addition to having all these projects in the registry, each project has to be identified by its readiness level. And we'll look more in detail at that later on, but suffice it to say for now, just think of that as where it is in the pipeline from sort of concept to implementation. And then if it's sort of like halfway through that process, we need to make sure that everybody gets on board, and we do that through an approved transition plan so that this is coordinated amongst both the developers and the people who are going to do the transition, and then also the people who are going to accept the results of that transition into operations. And then it goes sort of a next step in that it encourages folks who are involved in this process of R2O to leverage to the maximum extent possible the virtual lab for purposes of collaboration. So this is the idea that two people out there working different shifts, working in different parts of the country, can still manage to work together cooperatively through the use of the VLab, and thereby hopefully reduce duplication and bring the synergies of groups and teams together on issues of importance to the National Weather Service and therefore important to the nation. And then also the directive encourages us to use the virtual lab for software development. which is a very big part of what we do in the National Weather Service that converts money into actual capabilities. And then the last thing is the directive requires that we have a transition path to a target operational system. And this is the idea that, you know, transition doesn't end, or development doesn't really end with the, you know, the final product. It has to actually get into operations. And so this requirement makes sure that we focus on that and you know, divert the right requirements or right attention to make sure that it gets implemented. So we now know that 80-8 is really focused on getting, you know, things into transition, but you know, what is there to help us do that? And it turns out the NOAA Project Registry, which is in the virtual lab, is a capability that will facilitate that process, or those requirements, help us meet those requirements. And so the Project Registry is simply a web page and an underlying database, and of course in this case the database contains projects, and it allows NOAA folks to basically investigate what it is that we're doing in terms of R&D with the goal of improving collaboration and maintaining situational awareness. And you can envision a situation where, you know, somebody working at a forecast office has this great idea for a new tool for improving say severe thunderstorm forecasting. That individual can come into the registry, search for severe thunderstorm, see if others are working in an area similar to what he wants to do, and then collaborate with them. But if not, then potentially move forward with a new project. Then at some management level, they can be looking at all these projects and saying, okay, we need these resources. We need to make sure that these organizations are involved to improve that situational awareness and make everything work harmoniously to doing the R2 process. And then sort of critical to this topic, of course, is that it allows owners of projects to register their projects in a central location, which is important, and be in compliance with 80-8. So we mentioned projects. Let's take a quick moment to figure out what exactly we're talking about in this context. So it's this is straight out of the NOAA Administrative Order 216-108, and it says it's any research and development undertaking of a temporary nature to create a service, a product, a system, or an upgrade to a system in support of a valid NOAA mission requirement. And so as we focus in on that temporary nature, we see that in item 1, it mentions that projects are subcomponents of larger efforts or programs, and those are individual projects. So you could think of, like, you know, the HFIT program, right? There are many projects within the HFIT program. The HFIT program may go on for years and years and years, but projects will come along, result in some transition, and then, you know, the next project comes along. So that sort of helps you get a sense of what the project level is we're talking about here. Another thing to keep in mind is, like, if you're doing developing a model or something, so, you know, you have version X of the model, that's a project, it gets implemented, then say you do next year version Y, that's another project in the project registry. So sort of each year you would have a new project in the project registry, and then each time you transition that new model, the project would end. So a single project can only have one readiness level assigned to it, and this is a way of can help you figure out whether or not you got the right granularity on your project. So if you talk about one piece of the project is at a certain readiness level and another piece of the project is at another readiness level, then what you really have is two different projects. So the one piece is on its own transition path, and then the other part would have to be a separate project. And then finally, it's according to this definition, the R&D projects can only have one project owner. And of course, inevitably, you know, you're going to have multiple organizations, multiple people involved in a project, but you have to settle on sort of, we'll call them the project owner of record for that particular project. So we have these projects. Where do they come from? Well, in the National Weather Service, we have C-STAR programs, which generate you know, sort of projects. And over on the left-hand side, you can see sort of a graphical image of one involving Portland State University. They're developing some sort of, looks like a precipitation product of some sort. MDL, the Meteorological Development Laboratory, develops projects. And here's one aviation forecast verification system that MDL is involved in, part of the project registry. We have Sues and Does out there across the country. They have their staff there at the forecast offices working on projects. So we have a couple examples of the National Blend of Models, sort of a joint SUE effort. And then here's the WAVE project that is sort of a grassroots WFO-led kind of project. We have projects coming out of the National Water Center. So we got wharf hydro enhancement shown here, and then finally an example of an INSEP project involving improved eye wall replacement. So these projects start out at some level, RL level at the beginning, we'll call it, where they're just a concept perhaps, something of that nature, and then they mature over time to the point where they reach an operational deployment and become part of the National Service capability. And we'll call that RL9. We'll look at more detail on these RLs in a minute, but suffice it to say, you can see that projects move down the funnel. At some point, they may enter into a NOAA test bed or an operational proving ground at some stage of their development, or they may just kind of smoothly move from sort of the various developers organizations into operations. But all along the way, we have the virtual lab providing support for the transition process, and one way it does that is through the project's registry. So we mentioned the readiness levels, and here they are, and they apply to sort of a variety of things. They apply to a system, some sort of process might be developed that has a readiness level, a product which we're very intimately familiar with, perhaps a service, something else we're familiar with, or even a tool could go through the process through these various readiness levels. So the process begins with research, and so we have a couple readiness levels, basic research, applied research, and the National Weather Service is not usually involved in projects at this level, so we really pick up the ball at development. So we've got RL3, RL4, and RL5. Sort of begins with sort of a proof of concept. You want to see is, does this meet a requirement or two? Is it, even possible that this would work? And then it moves to RL4 into some sort of laboratory evaluation where, you decide whether or not it has maybe the potential for developed capabilities that you're interested in. RL5, we reach sort of a test environment evaluation. So, this could be actually at a WFO or something like that. The idea is, just to see if this is going to be a workable solution to a certain extent. And then after it seems to have proved its mettle in terms of, maybe satisfying requirements and has capability, then it moves into the demonstration phase at RL6, where you have some sort of prototype. You're in a test environment, so it's, fairly crude, but you're beginning to get a sense of this thing has merit and potential. Once it reaches a prototype and is moved into some sort of operational setting, maybe not into an actual operational organization, but into a setting that mirrors operations, you've reached RL7. And then once you have something that's pretty much been kind of run through its paces a bit, you've demonstrated its capabilities, you've reached RL8, and of course this would be in some sort of operational setting. And this is where the like a hazardous weather test bed might come into play. So perhaps in RL7 your project would be at the HWT, and then maybe at RL8 it would move on to the OPG operations proving ground, where it would be demonstrated in a very realistic setting. But finally, ultimately, it would reach transition time, where it would be deployed into an operational setting, and this is RL9 implementation, and we've crossed the R2O finish line, and everybody is happy. And if you'd like more information on readiness levels, including a more definitive definition, you can go to the Policy Directive 80-8 at the directives link and read them for yourself. So we've learned about the requirements of the 80-8, and now we'll take a look a little bit at the project registry and how it might help us meet some of these requirements. So here is a listing of projects that have been transitioned in 2016. And so if you were going before Congress, you could take this list of projects and say, look, here's how the money you gave us for R&D manifested itself. And then you could go down each of these projects and show them the value and the benefit to the United States and the public. So we also have the ability in some ways to monitor the transition process. So you might want to know, okay, well, how are the projects shaping up in terms of readiness level? And so here we can plot them out and we can see the pipeline of projects, and maybe you'd want a different ratio of projects at these various things. So you can begin to structure the process around the data and sort of manage it a bit. And then I've got a little arrow here showing all the projects transitioned here. So there's a fair number, just under 100 we'll call it. And is this enough? Did we do good? Could we do better? So it gives us the ability to evaluate the transition process. Here's an example of where we've broken it out, the number of the projects by line office. And so maybe managers would say that this is ideal. This is the way we want the portfolio to be configured. But maybe there's room for improvement. So, but with the data, we have the ability to make those kind of management decisions. So to make this process even better, we have say like this example of where we have projects broken out by target system. If you're an owner of one of these systems, you can then drill down into the projects that are destined for your target system and make sure that the resources are there to support them, that the people are there to, that you have visibility on those projects and that you're actively working to make sure that the operations is ready to receive them. One of the requirements of 80-8 is to basically have transition plans for every project that is at RL5 or greater. So here we have the, allows folks to demonstrate that they have their transition plan and make it available to people who might want to use it. Managers may want to get a sense of what's coming down the road, and so we can be prepared for the next year's projects by looking into the VLab and seeing when they're slated to transition. So we've seen that the project registry seems to have some value in meeting the requirements of 80-8, but just how easy is it to use? Well, it turns out we surveyed folks who have used the projects registry to enter projects, and we asked them if they felt that it was a quick and easy process. And about 3/4 said yes, that they did feel that way. So by and large, it's a pretty easy thing to do. Shouldn't worry about the effort level too terribly much. It's also fairly quick. We used Google Analytics to see how long people were taking when they logged into the projects registry, and folks were basically there about 5 minutes on average. So it's a rough approximation of how long it would take you to enter a new project into the registry. So not too terribly long. So now we've seen a little bit about the registry. Let's go ahead and take a look at its capabilities. We'll look first in a general way at the layout of the projects registry, sort of the page, landing page. We'll talk then about how to create a new project, and then we'll talk about how to search for projects, and finally we'll end up with a quick overview of just sort of how you might want to manage or maintain or update a project. So for those who've gone to the virtual lab, you may know that if you're logged into your Gmail account and you click on the VLab URL, that is vlab.insep.noaa.gov, you'll go right to the VLab without having to log in because you've already authenticated through your Gmail, and we use single sign-on as part of the VLab, so you won't have to log in. But if you were not logged in to your Gmail account and you typed in the VLab's URL, then you'll be presented with this screen, and you can just enter your Gmail user ID, that is your email address without the @noaa.gov at the end, and your password, and then click sign in. And this takes you to the main landing page for the virtual lab. And in the navigation bar here, this dark blue area in the middle of the screen, there's a drop-down menu called NOAA Projects Registry. And if you simply click on that, it'll take you to the NOAA Projects Registry. So we have sort of a three-piece page here. The first is where you do sort of the action side of the project's registry. So you can add a project, you can sort, and you can manage things and view reports and so forth. And then below that we have sort of the search area. And then finally at the very bottom we have the display area, which shows the project data. So in terms of the sort of the search area, at the most basic level, you can search all projects, or you can search just your projects. And when you look at data, you have the ability to look at a summarized version of the data. And so this is just the key information, you know, the ID, the name, the description, you know, when it's due to transition and its RL level, you know, really the sort of the real important information. And then you can also switch into a more detailed view, which shows quite a few more columns, but you know, gives you more data and requires you to sort of scroll around a bit more. So you can obviously toggle the advanced search area on and off. So the advanced search area allows you to enter information here, which we'll come back to later when we get to searching. And then you've got the data for the each project listed here, and then there's an action button here which allows you to do various activities. Because I'm a super user, I can, you know, obviously do many things, but if you're just here to view, you know, if you don't own the project and you're just visiting the registry, then you're likely going to have just the view one. If you're the project owner, then you'll have several others here, but for the most part it's sort of for viewing purposes. And then one item interesting to mention real quickly, let me see if I can highlight, is the export to CVS. So once you've got your project selected, you can then export it into a format that allows you to input the project data into Excel, and then you can do all kinds of manipulations on it and data analysis. So keep in mind that you can export project registry data to Excel. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump in and see how we might create a project. So we go to the Add Project button and click on that. And we notice initially that we have sort of a data entry area, and on the top of it we have 7 steps, each of which has a nice little label there. And then there's some fields underneath it. In this case there's a mere 2 fields. And then there's some navigation buttons at the bottom which allow us to move back and forth easily between steps. So ultimately we're going to fill in all these things. Some of the items are required and a number of them are not. For those that are required, we have it labeled with a nice little required label there. And if you should happen not to include some required information, the field will turn red, as will the step that that field is in. So it helps you identify areas that you may need to tidy up on. So we'll go ahead and enter some data here, and we'll call this test project 1, and a nice description. Okay, so we're now ready to move on to the next step, and we can use these, you know, this sort of navigation tool at the top. Simply click on the next step, and you'll notice that the blue bubble, which had indicated we were on step 1, description, is now blue for project owner section or step. And so you can easily figure out where you are in the overall process. It tries to pre-populate information for you as much as it can. So in this case, it knows that I'm John Chattel, and it's put my name as the owner of the project. Notice that there's a little tooltip here, so you mouse over that. You can get some more information on exactly what this field expects. So this is looking for the person who's responsible for the milestones, the schedule, etc. And would ultimately be making updates you know, in terms of the readiness level. So if that isn't you, then you can enter the name of the person that it does correspond to, and then we need to enter a telephone number. So in my case that's 301-427-9090, You notice it's populated my email address, so that's good. It's required field, so if you're just entering the data for somebody, then you need to enter their email address. This time I'll just use the next button. So now we're at step 3. This is the longest page and has the most required items, so this will probably take you a little bit longer to work on than the other two have. So this is where we're going to enter some critical information about the projects, and a lot of it deals around organizations. So the first organization we provide is the line office, and this is for the project, and it's oftentimes the project owner's line office. So in this case will be a National Weather Service project. We have the project owner's organization. So in this case I'm MDL, so I type in MDL into the field, it goes down the list of options, and eventually sort of reduces the number of options till it gets to the point where it selects the one that I'm looking for, and then we go to this source organization, which is sort of where this capability came from originally. Okay, so maybe this is like at a university, and in this case that's what we're going to assume it is. Let's assume it's at Colorado State. Oops. So we've got Colorado State University, and the transition partner is going to be, say, Western Region, who was in the process of supporting them in this effort. So we'll type in Western Region. And they're the ones who are actually responsible for making this transition, work, so to speak. So they'll be engaged in it very extensively, whereas Colorado State University may be out of the picture for the most part because they've handed it off to Western Region. Then we want to know the applying organization, or another way to think of this is the receiving organization. So where is this going to be implemented in operations? And so let's assume this is like CPC, and so we'll enter them. This is an R2O project. Most projects within the National Weather Service will be R2O, but you could envision a R2C or an R2U, and that's commercialization and use. And if you want to know more information, you can use the tooltip, and it'll remind you just what those are. But we're going to go R2O, and in so doing, we have committed ourselves to having to select a target operational system. So in this case, we're going to send it to WCOS. And you can see here sort of a distinction worth pointing out, and that is that WCOS is the system, and there are many applications, and some of those applications actually have the word system in them. But for the purposes of the project registry, we're very much focused on the actual compute system, so something that would run an application. So if you're developing an application, your application is not the target system. It would be wherever it's envisioned to run. And of course the obvious reason for doing that is we want the people who own these target systems to see these projects in the pipeline so they can anticipate them and then hopefully work to make sure resources are available. So now we're going to choose a readiness level, and in my case I'm just going to assume that this one came in the middle of things. We're at the readiness level 7, and if you kind of want more information on those, you can try to read through the tooltip. Good luck on that, but there you go, it's available. So we didn't choose RL9, so we can't enter a transition date, but had we done so, entered a 9, we would have been able to enter the transition date. Very important, want to do that. Okay, so we've gone through here, and in so doing we found all the organizations that we were looking for, all the target system or the target system that we were looking for. But it's conceivable that you might go through this process and realize that the say organization that corresponds to your project isn't in our drop-down list. If that happens, you have the option, the ability to request a new organization. So you click on the button, brings up a dialog, you enter like 3 things on the organization, and then you click submit. And then an email is generated to us and the Virtual Lab support team. We take a look at it, assuming everything looks good, then it gets approved and populated into the drop-down list where you then can enter and can select it. So we've been doing this a fair amount of time. We've gotten a lot of the organizations in there, but not to say that there couldn't be 1 or 2 that hasn't quite made it in. Same thing with the target request target system. you can request that a new target system be added, and so we would get an email, make the approval, and then you get, I believe you get feedback on that as well. So you have that ability if it doesn't quite meet with your needs at this point. So let's go on to the next step. We're now at step 4, halfway through the process. We're talking transition at this point. So it asks if we have a transition plan. Yes, we do. When is this envisioned to be entered, transitioned, that is. So we have a nice thing. You could put today. You could, basically enter the, I guess, step forward through the thing to the date that it's going to be transitioned. Perhaps, let's say it's going to be at the end of next fiscal year. So we'll select October 2018. Then we want to update, since we are TRL7, which is greater than RL5, we want to include our transition plan. And so we click on Choose, and we go down to File on our desktop, which hopefully is the transition plan. And I just happen to have something of general note there, so we'll just use that. And on to step 5. Step 5 is optional, so if you don't have a test bed or a proving ground that your project is in, then you can move on to the next step. But if it does, you simply go into the available column, select, say, hydrometeorology test bed, click the arrow to move it over into the selected one, and then once this project is saved, this item will be part of the project's data, and these items will not. So on to the next step. So here we have a number of optional fields. We want the VLab project registry to be a source of additional information. So people who look at the registry entry can go and find more information, and in this case we provide links to that information. So if you happen to have a VLab community for your project, you can include its link here. That will allow people to go to take a look at all the information you have there. We can have a Redmine project, so if you've got a software development effort going on associated with this project, then you can point people to those that project effort. And then maybe you just got some web page that you've used over the years or whatever for the project. You can link people to that information as well. So feel free to enter anything there. And then we arrive at the end, which is categorization. Again, these are all optional fields, so don't feel like you have to do it. There's some strategic goals you can select from if you want to sort of label yours as one of these, participating in one of these goals. You can enter keywords here. Simply, if you wanted to enter a severe thunderstorm, maybe you could just type in severe, and you hit return, and now anytime someone searches, it will look in these tags, and it will show your project under the tag severe. So help people to more easily find it. So now we've reached the final step of data entry, and we are presented with our Save button. So before this, if something had gone terribly awry, your computer had gotten turned off, or there was some sort of catastrophic thing, unfortunately you would have lost your data. But hopefully everything's gone smoothly. You've made it to the end, and now to actually save the data that you've entered into the project registry, you click the Save button. So now the data is being saved to the database, and a email is being sent to an approver. And in our case, for the National Weather Service, Steve Smith is the approver, and he reviews all the new projects that get entered into the registry, and he'll oftentimes send you a nice little email saying, hey, thanks for entering a nice project into our database. Really appreciate it. So he's just doing a sanity check to make sure that there isn't anything inconsistent about the data or whatnot. And then assuming everything's good, he approves the data, or I'm sorry, approves the project. And it's then visible at that point to anyone who would search through the registry. So before approval, it's only viewable to you and other approvers. But after being approved, it's visible to anyone who looks at the registry. Okay, so that's the step. So now if we go to the list of projects, you notice now that our Test 1 project shows up, and you can see all the information that it's listed at pending, meaning that the approver still has yet to review it. So now let's take a look at, and then we can also check under My Projects, and we'll see that Now I have a project, so it makes it really convenient and easy to find. Oh, and by the way, when it does get approved, you will receive an email, and the status will become approved. All right, so now let's take a look at searching. So, you as a user of the registry may be interested in kind of taking a look and seeing who's doing what. So we have this nice advanced search area here. These fields correspond to data within the registry on each project. So you can obviously search for the project's ID if you happen to know that. Maybe somebody said, hey, take a look at project ID 1102. You can simply enter that in and go directly to the project. Well, one thing worth mentioning is that so you have all these fields, and when the search is made, you can either include all of them in the search so that the project has to match all the data that you've entered, or you can select any, and then it'll match a project that has this or that, depending on which data fields you've entered. So the one that's going to obviously restrict projects that you view the most is the all. So it has to have all the different fields that you've entered. And if you don't enter something in one of the fields, obviously it doesn't attempt to match anything in that field. So some other useful information, you can obviously sort things by readiness level. So why don't we look for all readiness levels at 7. And then let's take a look at all all line offices that are all projects with a National Weather Service line office. And you can also enter target operations system, perhaps the owner's name, a keyword that might appear in the description or the project name, and then the various organizations. So if you just wanted to see MDL projects, let's say, let's see, yeah, so how about source? Well, we'll just go with this one. So MDL. And then you can come down here and click the search button. Now, if you've done some searching and you want to get back to the situation where you can view all the projects, then you can simply click the View All button. And then if you want to clear out all the fields that you've entered potential matches against, then you can just click the Clear Form button. So let's go ahead and do our search. And we get one project back. That's amazingly the one we entered earlier, but it's at RL7. It is owned by someone MDL, that's me, and it's from the National Weather Service line office. But let's go ahead and let's make it less restrictive, so let's not make it into this. Let's see, let's get rid of all that. And now let's do a search, and we'll see perhaps a few more, or not. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do the search. Sorry about that. Let's see, what have I done wrong? Probably the best thing to do is let's clear all. Let's go to readiness level 7, which is what we were trying to do, and do a search. Oh, I'm still in My Projects. That's why. So, okay, now we'll go to All the Projects tab. And so now we have all the readiness levels at 7. And you can see that there's quite a large number of them. We can take a look at the particular one. So we're going to the project data, and you can see that this is essentially all the information that this project has in the project's registry. You can peruse it and basically do what you need to do with that information. Okay, so that pretty much covers the advanced search option. Now let's assume that you want to go back and at some point adjust the readiness level, let's say, or some other project data. You simply go to the project itself, so you can either do that through the advanced search, or you can go to your My Projects tab, and then go over to the Action button, select the Edit, and we're presented with a screen that looks very familiar to the one that we use to enter project data. We want to enter, let's say, maybe we want to attach a project document, so we can go here. Notice that this particular step was not there when we initially created the project. So, but at some point we may have some project documentation we want to add. So we can come in here and add an attachment. And we can use the drag or drop, which I'm not going to do right now, but you can do that, and then you'd be able to attach the document. If you were through at that point, you would click the Save button to make sure you save your project data. Let's go ahead and adjust the readiness level, and we'll go to Step 8, next on the list, making progress towards implementation. Click the Save button, and once again, the project is done. And so that's the update phase of project management. And so with that, I would invite you at some point to come in, enter your project data, perhaps look around. There's some dynamic reports that you can take a look at. You can sort, which is always useful, and this is all pretty self-explanatory. You can sort based on, create date, modify date, and so forth. So, and then, oh yeah, one thing I should mention, just for completeness sake. So some of these fields in the display area have these little arrows on them, and this allows you to quickly sort them. So, if say you wanted to look at all the readiness levels and you want to start from the beginning, you can now sort them obviously from 9 through 1, but and so here we are with the 9s. And then you can reverse the level or reverse the order of sort by simply clicking the arrow again, and now we're at 1. Okay. So with that, I do invite you to take a look at the project's registry. And if you should need some help, either with the registry or the VLab in general, feel free to contact the Virtual Lab support team at vlab.admin@noaa.gov. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions you might have.